So, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, the American Printing House for the Blind. We are pleased to partner with the Braille Institute in celebration of the 2021 National Braille Challenge, which is happening virtually across the United States. Today is the third of fourth in a series of Braille Challenge webinars that we are hosting in collaboration with the Braille Challenge, and it's featuring the LEGO Braille Bricks. Today is called More Playful Experiences for Pre-Braille Instruction. And Rachel Antoine is with us today from the Braille Institute and would like to be able to share with you all a warm welcome to today's feature.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Amy. Again, my name is Rachel Antoine. I am the manager of National Programs and Services at the Braille Institute. We're so happy to partner with APH to bring you this webinar in our Braille Challenge webinar series. This year has presented new challenges for everyone, but that has not stopped our amazing Braille students from taking the Braille Challenge. We have been overwhelmed by the commitment, innovation, and dedication from our partners and the full Braille Challenge network in bringing this program to students in new ways. So now a huge congratulations to all the students who have already taken their contests, and good luck to all those who are going to be taking their contest soon. You're going to face many challenges in life, but just by taking the challenge, you're already a winner. And when you face those challenges, remember to keep calm and Braille on. Please feel free to connect with me after the webinar for more information about the Braille Challenge. Thank you again, APH.
And thank you, Rachel, for being able to share. We hope that many of you in the audience had students who were able to participate in that and perhaps are in that waiting stage of wondering how those results will come out. So also joining us today is a very special cameo appearance of APH's very own Mike Hudson. He is museum director. Mike, what exciting artifact can you share with us today?
Hi guys, I am coming to you live from the Museum of the American Printing House for the Blind here in Louisville. We're in my office today. You get to see, it's kind of junky. That's all the ideas that are floating around. Some of them will turn into good ideas, maybe some of them not. I want to talk a little bit about, Legos. We're all excited here at APH about the new Braille Legos, but it's not the first time that the Lego concept has been applied to Braille education. That honor belongs to a kit called Tactiles. And there was a dad out there. His name was Kevin Murphy. And this is back in the 1980s. His son, Kevin, was really struggling with Braille. The kid wanted to learn to read, but was really having a lot of trouble with Braille. And despite everything, Kevin and his teachers had tried. They just hadn't been able to get it through, but the kid loved to play with Legos, and who doesn't, right? And so his dad, Kevin, took the Legos that his kid was playing with, mounted the Braille onto the dots onto the tops of the tiles, and by 1981 had this toy that worked wonderfully in getting his kid to learn Braille, and he did master Braille as a reading medium. Kevin Murphy wanted to bring this to other parents around the country, and the first commercial version of Tactiles appeared in 1994. And then later on, they actually developed a Nemeth code version, and it was translated into a number of foreign languages as well. So it's been used around the world. You can still buy it. You can go to Tactiles and find these. One advantage that they have over the Braille, the Lego version, is that they do include contractions. And of course, you can do math, even advanced math with Nemeth. But a lot of ideas that we come up with in our classrooms are ones that can be used by everybody if we just learn to share them. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mike. I wonder how many in the audience, educators, have had their hands on the Tactiles. I know that when I was teaching and at a residential school and was a Braille teacher, I used those frequently as motivation. And and it was always something fun and exciting. So thank you for sharing that with us today. So presenting with us today is Leanne Grillot, APH's National Director of Outreach Services, which I always think means that she is a very busy professional, and I have seen that to be true. She brings to the organization and this presentation a wealth of information and ideas for serving students with visual impairments. And in addition, our student teacher videos come from Mentor Public Schools in the state of Ohio. Ashley Adams is an intervention specialist currently completing coursework to become a licensed teacher of students with visual impairments through Shawnee State University. She's been an educator for 10 years and has a deep passion for working with students and finding new ways to engage her students in the learning process. Today, you're also going to get to meet Janessa, an 11-year-old young girl currently in the 5th grade learning Braille. Both teacher and student is featured in some of our videos that we will be sharing today. By the end of our presentation, this is what we hope that you will walk away with. We hope that you will walk away with having seen and being talked about the 5 holistic skills critical to the learning process, and how these holistic skills fit into 4 separate activities that will be demoed today. You're also going to see how the characteristics of playful learning are easily embedded within the activities. You'll see learning in action by observing lessons using the LEGO Braille Bricks. And finally, you'll see how to practice the pre-Braille skills of manipulation, orientation, constellation using the Braille Bricks. And now we begin.
Hello, everyone. This is Leanne Grillot. We are again digging our hands into those pre-Braille activities identified on the LEGO website for Braille Bricks. So everything I'm talking about, for the most part, are activities that are identified there with lesson plans, materials available for you. So let's kind of dig in and get going. We need to recognize that the LEGO Foundation has placed activities into particular categories. The 3 categories that are really surrounding the thought of pre-Braille matter not only for students who are learning Braille or getting ready to learn Braille, but also realize these are for students who might actually know Braille, but have never manipulated these bricks in this way to identify and use as letters. So keep in mind that some of these pre-Braille activities could also be in some ways pre-Braille brick activities as well. The first is manipulation, actually using and handling the bricks and assembling them. That movement in and of itself is not something that you inherently know. You need to practice those. Orientation is the second category. This is actually positioning the bricks on the base plate and understanding that their orientation matters. There's an importance to what is right side up, upside down, turned around, sideways, next to. And then the third is constellation. Constellation is a unique vocabulary word for meaning the dot configurations, how the Braille cell studs are arranged in the 2 columns. So you might have the habit of identifying your dots by dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The word that they use to talk about those Braille cells is constellation. Let's dig into some learning. Are you ready? Play-based learning activities. So the first activity we're going to talk about, which is a lesson inside the Braille Bricks website, is called Frozen Penguins. It's listed under the manipulation component. Let's think about this for a minute. It tells you you need random bricks, a bowl, a base plate, and there are holistic skills that they are going to discuss. So what I'm going to do for you is I am going to share my LEGO bricks with you. What I have done is I have set up the LEGO base plate with 5 Braille bricks placed along the left-hand edge with 6 dots of Braille cells or LEGO brick dots in between each one. The picture that they had given us was the letter E all the way down, which happens to be all yellows. And it just states that you're saying there are 5 frozen penguins on the base plate and they need friends to keep them warm. And you are to have a bowl of Braille bricks ready to go. So some of the,
Leanne,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask, on our screen, we are seeing a little bit more information on, it looks like your dashboard for the IPEVO visualizer. And it is actually overlapping with your, there it goes.
Thank you. You got to move things out of the way sometimes. That was a focusing element. So thank you. Okay, so the Braille bricks are placed here along the line. And the story or the information to prepare is very short. So to take this a little bit further to think about the students that you might be working with, penguins might be a concept that you might not think about, and they might not have had access to, depending on where you live. Maybe in some other places you have penguins readily available. I happen to live in Florida. Penguins are not readily available. Something that is readily available, especially in South Florida, that get cold, especially when we happen to have cold weather, are iguanas. I don't know if you've ever heard about Florida having the problem of iguanas falling when it's frozen, but this is something that is quite hilarious in our field and in Florida. And so instead of penguins on the letter E, I actually decided I want to change it to iguanas, and we're going to keep the iguanas warm. So that discussion with your student about something that might be really happening in their area, and this is cold right now, let's make it a story. So we have iguanas that are cold and we want to keep them warm. Well, you as a person, and so I have brought out a LEGO person who might be the Good Samaritan, might be the zookeeper, might be somebody who is involved. They are the ones that are going to sit with the extra iguanas or friends, and the student can reach into the bowl, pick out a friend, keeping their left hand on the top iguana that needs a friend, and learn how to keep him warm by placing it next to. Now that placement of next to is tricky, and actually taking the time to manipulate and then feel if the buddy is as warm as possible can be challenging. They might end up placing it below, and so there's a little shoulder of this iguana that isn't warm enough. So that manipulation of movement to make it warmer. One of the things that you might want to think about is not overcorrecting. Taking the time to allow the student to reach in, move down to find the next brick, and then place it on the board, possibly incorrectly, and have a discussion about, well, this brick leaves some space along the edge of this iguana to keep warm. Can you turn the brick so that all of the edge is covered, and allowing them to work on picking up the brick and actually orienting? Some tricks for your student can be taking the brick with the short side, pushing it up against the edge, if that's how it had originally oriented, and actually keeping that corner of the brick pressed against the edge as they rotate the tile. It allows them to maintain contact, but recognizing that they've got to get to the other edge. That manipulation, that turn of your hand is what you're really looking for your student. Other activities you can do is you can start to talk about who is missing one. So as we've got 5, you might have pre-placed 2 of our iguanas or penguins with friends and ask them which one needs a buddy to keep warm, and allow them to take their hand and move down until they feel one that isn't as fat or as wide to find the next one that needs a brick next to it. So again, take your time to think about what would make the most sense for your student and realize the true activity is manipulation, and they might end up manipulating and placing a brick print-wise that would be upside down, or even Braille-wise that's upside down. But that was not the intent of the activity. The intent of the activity really was to place the item on the brick by manipulating those pieces. I'll wait a minute. I'll turn it back over to our slides. And I'll give it to you, Amy, for a second.
So now it is your turn. In learning about the LEGO Braille Bricks and this activity, loved the adaptations that you made to this activity to make us think about how we can modify things ever so slightly, especially to meet the unique needs of our students. In learning about these LEGO Braille Bricks to support any one of the combination of the characteristics of play. So we'd like you to think about frozen penguin, although we modified it, frozen iguana. How did this activity support the characteristics? So what we see here is a checklist of what these characteristics of play are. And we want to know, what do you think this lesson, this activity supported? What did you see? So actively engaging. Do you imagine your student being able to be actively immersed, mentally immersed in the activity? Do you think of it as being very meaningful, relating to some new experiences, opportunities for imitation? Do you, by chance, think of this as giving opportunities for being socially interactive? How about joyful? Is there a power of surprise? Maybe even frustration resolved by breakthrough? Is there trial and error for iterative? There's not necessarily a right and wrong answer to this. It's just, what do you think? These are the 5 characteristics of play in this lesson that Leanne demoed about wanting to keep frozen iguanas warm so they don't fall out of the trees in Florida. What do you think? So think about that. And I just want to share out that this is what our audience is sharing right now, that 88% of you believe that your students would be completely actively engaged with this. But you know what? What you're seeing is a variety of a mixture of all of the characteristics of play, that it has meaningfulness to it. There's opportunities for being socially interactive, joyful. I found it to be joyful, even though I'm not an iguana fan. I thought it was joyful. And also opportunities for iterative, trial and error with that. Maybe the student has difficulty getting it placed. Loved what you mentioned, Leanne, about keeping the shoulders warm. So that is just great in thinking about how these characteristics of play actually folded into this activity.
Okay, so let's move on. So here is another activity, again, available at the Braille Bricks website. It is called Find the Crazy Duck. Okay, this is about orientation. And there is definitely, as you can hear, maybe an element of play already with your title. You are finding a crazy duck. It tells you to organize a base plate with a line of 10 bricks or more going across the top. It discusses the holistic skills of physical, creative, and social. So physical is the naming of spatial relationships, comparing differences, similarities. Creative, so reproducing, assembling, organizing, kind of linking graphic patterns, creating new ones. Social, following some rules in a game or turn taking. So let's think a little bit about this. What we have is a line of Braille bricks oriented in reading mode, in the ability to read the Braille as alphabet letters. One of those bricks is turned wrong. The idea is to ask your student, which one is wrong? Can you find the crazy duck in this line of ducks and make it correct? So I'm going to pop over to my line of crazy ducks. So at the top edge of the base plate, I have put a row of Braille bricks oriented correctly, but one is turned. I have made it so there are 10 bricks across with a single line of studs on the base plate between each, meaning they are not next to one another. In doing so, if you turn one brick, it ends up butting up against the edges of both. Activities that you can do with your student. Ducks tend to be common, at least in the English vocabulary, whether it be you playing duck, duck, goose. There are many nursery rhymes with a duck in it. So it could be that you decide that your student is the mother duck for today, and they have a row of ducks and they have to help them. You could ask them to feel each brick and say duck if the Braille brick is oriented up and down so that it is long and thin as opposed to going across. So they would go duck, they would feel that there's a break in between, say duck for the next one, feel that there's a break in between, duck, and so forth. As they get closer to the crazy duck, you're going to notice that fingers are going to feel that there is no space between the ducks. There's a bigger empty spot at the bottom. Depending on how your student is feeling across the bricks, they might catch that there's a big empty space, or they might catch what feels like a very long solid brick, because you can really not feel those separations between each brick when they're placed next to one another so closely. Meaning this one is the crazy one. Again, the orientation that I did across this board was only one spare line break in between each. That alone means that you have some indication that there's something different in this section. To be able to pop off that brick that's different, turn, we've got a little bit of manipulation going on, and then orient, putting it down in the correct space. Realize some students cannot maintain the space separation to keep that one line, and theirs might end up next to. Depending on what you're talking about for what constitutes the crazy duck, if it is truly just orientation, placing it up and down, what you're discussing is that the brick needs to hit the top and the dots stay upward, and that there's this space at the bottom. When you think about the Braille bricks, ones with less dots might be more challenging to orient. Ones with more dots allow the finger to recognize there's something in dots 3 and 6, which help identify that there is that space below. Some teachers have mounted a identifier or dot so that upright reading is available. And then others have indicated that if you don't do that, you're also allowing a student the ability to manipulate these Braille bricks and actually orient them upside down to meet the needs of some contractions. So again, this one is truly talking about orientation and the split. Now, one of the things I noticed when setting up this activity is that you can have larger spaces between each. So if I set it up so that there are 2 spaces between each set of Braille bricks, what you end up with is the equivalent of a full empty Braille space between each. If you turn one of these bricks in the wrong direction, we've created our crazy duck. Going across, the student again can say duck, 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 and then, oh my gosh, they found the goose or the crazy duck that's out of place, but it still maintains separation between the Braille bricks. Orienting it correctly turning it, twisting it, and putting it in place. With more space is more challenging to line up with equal space on either side. Many people say that this you want your Braille bricks next to one another to read a word. So realize putting it next to then starts creating a word. So orienting with space between, you might actually be talking about how there are space between words, especially when we're talking about single letter contracted words. So do keep some of those things in mind. You can go even further and make even wider spaces, which would be 3 between. You're getting less and less bricks on your board when you do so. Putting 3 between is a much larger space between. This is good if you're just working on orienting on tracking going across. You turn 1 crazy duck. And again, there's much more space between, but if you're working on some mapping and some tracking of a large area, this is a way to take that time and actually track all the way across to see what's available. And there is a little bit about crazy ducks. Now, that was my crazy duck. This can happen. I am going to stop sharing because I realized I forgot to share with my sound. And I'm going to turn that on, Amy. And are you ready for me to hit play?
Absolutely. In just a moment, I want to just get things set up for you. So in this video, what you're going to see is a student named Janessa is seated at a table. Her teacher, Miss Adams, is sitting to her left side. On the table is a Lego base plate, which has Braille bricks that are attached to it in a row. And you're going to see that in this example, initially, Janessa doesn't quite understand what she's supposed to do in the activities. So you're going to see some of that coaching and that instruction for her to become familiar with what it is that she should be doing.
All right, Miss Janessa, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ducks. Okay, they're crazy ducks. One of my ducks is out of order. Which is the crazy duck that's out of order? This one. Why do you think that one's out of order? Which duck is not sitting in the right direction? That one. That's not, oh, there's not a Lego there. Yeah. That's an empty hole. Yeah. These are the Legos. You feel them? This is the Lego. Look. It's a rectangle. We found this one. Where's the duck that's not in the right order? Which is the crazy duck? This one. That one's, he's getting straight up. He's good. Yeah. Let's explore all of them. Which one is the crazy duck that's not going up and down the right way?
Janessa then comes to a brick that is placed sideways. Miss Adam asks her to fix the duck so it goes the right way. He's being a crazy duck and needs to be pulled off. Miss Adams helps her place the duck up and down. That crazy duck is now back in order. Miss Adams then pulls the base plate to the side, rearranges some of the bricks, and then she passes the plate back to Janessa. Where did the crazy duck go? Janessa tactfully explores the individual bricks at the end of the row. Then slowly, she moves her hands to the beginning of the row and then spots the crazy duck. He's sitting sideways instead of up and down. Janessa moves the brick and turns it to the right position. The ducks are now all straight up and down and in a row.
So a little bit about how students do their work. Here's your next one, Amy.
So here's something to think about. Another opportunity. You got to see the demo that Leanne did of a variation that you could play in the part of Crazy Duck, how to set it up, maybe things to anticipate. You also got to see a video of a student actually participating in one rendition of the Crazy Duck game. So what do you think about the characteristics of play? Now, I failed to mention in the last time we did this with the frozen iguanas that you can actually pick more than one characteristic of play. We know that an activity can have more than one characteristic of play. So, did you find and what did you see? Actively engaging? Was it a meaningful? Did you see imitation take place? What about socially interactive? It was a little more difficult to see if there was a communicating of thoughts. Just we had some audio difficulties, so we had to mute some of it. Maybe was there frustration resolved through breakthrough that would lead to a joyful feeling? Trial and error as well with trying to put the brick in the right way, or not the brick, I should say, the Crazy Duck. What do you think that you saw? You can select more than one characteristic of play. And we'll share for you just so that you can know what everyone else thought as well. A lot of you, 54%, said that it was actively engaging. You saw that student actively engaged, meaningful, socially interactive. Definitely, we all saw too that iterative element that is a characteristic of play. So these are just some things. There's not a right or wrong answer to this. It's just, what do you think? What did you see? And where in your mind can you see your students headed with characteristics of play as you imagine setting this lesson up?
So let's talk about the third type of activity that you might have for pre-Braille instruction, or almost pre-Braille brick instruction, is Constellation. This game is identify dots 1, 2, 3. It again is available in the Braille Bricks website. The idea, and they tell you to start with a base plate, 10 random bricks, and a bowl. What you're going to do is have a plain base plate, a bowl with bricks in it, and then hand it to the student. The goal is to find a brick that has a dot 1 and place it on the base plate. The rule with this game is that it can have other dots in addition to a dot 1, but it must have a dot 1. Okay. The skills, the holistic skills that it's talking about are cognitive. It's showing, using a number to show rank or position. Creative, spontaneously engaging, exploring, and using different tools, different media. Physical, the act of exploring, investigating to get information and the tactile properties of an object. Emotional, hopefully there's some courteous behavior as we're working through identifying, and maybe we're taking turns to do so, and making it social, both with complying with directions, but then also are we engaging with our instructor in a way to get clear information. So let's look at this. So I have a base plate with no bricks on it in front of me, and I have a bowl of Braille bricks next to me. Getting set up for this activity and thinking about how a student is going to reach into the bowl to find a brick, and I ask them to only find a brick with a dot 1. It can have other dots, but must have a dot 1. Reaching into the bowl themselves, I personally found more challenging and possibly a higher level of frustration for some individuals. The bricks are not necessarily oriented in an easy way to identify upright, but if you have a student who has more of that skill and has built that skill up, bowl is fine. What I did instead is I found my own smaller base plate. You could have also used different gray base plate, but I had to maximize my space. I have a separate base plate that I oriented bricks in the correct position for reading and allow a student to feel the correct position of reading without having to manipulate the brick. So they can come to the first brick and we can discuss, does the first brick have a .1? Now this is an A, so I hope we would figure out that this one has a .1. They would then work on manipulating, pulling it off this base plate, and then orienting and placing it on the gray base plate. Yes, this one had a .1, and I was able to put the brick down so .1 stayed in the .1 position. They can go back to my brick orientated task place, and they can look at the second one on that row and feel it happens to be a C. So does it have a .1? Yes, it has a .1. It happens to have another dot as well, but that wasn't the important part. .1 was important. So they again manipulate, take their left hand and go up and place. At this point in time, you can work with your student to talk about, are we building a word? Do we want spaces between these? Or are we building a sentence with spaces, or are we building a word without spaces? Then they can move across and find the next brick. The next brick is a W. So W does not have a .1. W stays on the board. Move to the next one. It's an O. Does O have a .1? It does. So they have to, again, manipulate, orient, and place. Continue moving across. Even if they found that W again, they know that one was one that didn't move to the gray base plate. Move to the next. This one is actually a number sign. Well, the number sign doesn't use a .1, so it stays as well. It doesn't get to come down to the base plate. They could then go through all of these lined bricks that were already pre-oriented for them to decide if it goes on the base plate. You can then remove the bricks and you can play this game again, only this time you're talking about .2. Let's examine these and see which ones get to go down to the base plate because they had a .2 in it. Now this is truly about constellation. We're talking about the dot placements. Ideas could be using things like muffin tins and egg cartons. It could be that you're pulling out a Braille writer. It could be that you are actually feeling Braille on a note card that you are working on. Or it could be that we're still at that pre-Braille level where we're just trying to understand that dots make up letters, that we need to know about dots and we need to know about placement, that we need to have an understanding of constellation. You might have a student who you can identify the letter and you might have others that cannot. The activity, the design was to talk about constellation. So some of your students might be able to pick up what letter they're actually holding. So if you have already discussed the letter A with your student, but not reached W yet, for whatever way you're going through your Braille alphabet, you might be able to talk about A and identify A as having .1 and know it's A. But when they get to W, you might just make the decision that we're not talking about what letter it is. We're just discussing about the constellation. It doesn't have a .1 in it, so it's not going to go down there. You can make this harder by saying which bricks have dots 1 and 2. I will tell you, once you start adding more dots in your configuration, you need to really think ahead to what you either put in the bowl or on the separate setting. So there's actually at least 1 or 2 bricks that are making it to the base plate. Otherwise, it's not the most fun game in the world if none of them make it there. The other thing you can do is you can actually think about words that contain certain dots, especially single letter contractions, in which we could actually make a simple sentence with the words, with the letters that ended up down on the base plate. Ready, Amy?
We are ready, so we're going to feature another video. And just so that you know, there's quite a bit of audio description that's going to be given to this. So just bear with me as we go through that together. The teacher, Miss Adams, shows Janessa, the student, an empty base plate. Then she guides her hand to a bowl on the left side. Inside the bowl are a bunch of Braille bricks. Janessa takes out a brick from the bowl, and Miss Adams asks if the brick has a .1 on it. Janessa says yes and places it on the base plate. She tells the teacher that it is a letter A. Janessa then reaches inside the bowl for another letter. She touches the dots and says L, which has a .1. She places it on the base plate, but when she does, it's on upside down. Miss Adams then takes Janessa's right hand and guides her to touch that brick. She asks her if it's upside down. Janessa then removes the brick, but when she does, she places it horizontally instead of vertically. The teacher helps her to compare the two bricks on the base plate. Janessa moves the letter L brick to a vertical position. Next, she pulls out another brick from the bowl and places it on the base plate. Miss Adams helps her to place it so that it's in a vertical position. When Janessa calls out the letter to be a C, the teacher stops her, guides her hands back to look at the letter again. The brick has dots 1, 5. Janessa reaches into the bowl and gets out another brick. With excitement, she tells Miss Adams it's the letter A. Instead of placing the fourth brick next to the others in a row, she stacks the new brick on top of the previous one. It works. When the bowl is empty and all the bricks are on the base plate, Miss Adams tells Janessa just to double check all the bricks on the plate. Only bricks with .1 should be on it. Janessa touches the brick with dots 2, 4, 5. Oops, it shouldn't be there. The teacher hands her a brick removal tool, and Janessa pries off the letter J. So now we have one final chance to practice spotting the characteristics of play. Well, I should share that I had my own moment of being iterative and a little bit of joyful, because I realized in the last poll I gave you, I only had it selected to that you could only pick one. Well, I made that change through trial and error because I did wrong. I resolved it and I was really happy breaking through that frustration of mine that I made it correct for you. So now you're going to be able to pick more than one, because we know that activities can have more than one characteristic of play. So think back about what we saw either in Leanne, what you demoed, or what we saw of Janessa. And what did you see happening? Did you see that she was actively engaged? Did you find it meaningful? Maybe there was imitation. Socially interactive. Again, it's hard to tell without any sound, but we can definitely use our imagination to think about how those two, the teacher and student, related to each other. Maybe Janessa had a bit of frustration that was resolved by breakthrough. Maybe she even had trial and error, a bit of iterative. So this time you were able to choose more than one, not a right or wrong answer to it. What do you think this activity of dots 1, 2, 3 ended. So 85% selected actively engaged. Iterative was second in line, with third in line being meaningful. But again, there were lots of opportunities for being socially interactive. And I think that we've imagined too joyful, because joyful doesn't have to mean happiness. It can mean that aha moment when you break through any frustration and you finally get it right. Even making sure to toggle in the Zoom settings so that participants can select more than one choice. So that was characteristics of play. All right, now, if you want to learn more about using the LEGO Braille Bricks, we hope that you will accept this personal invitation to visit APH's learning management system. It's called the Hive. Inside is a course that's uniquely designed to help educators, to help you have a better understanding about the LEGO Braille Bricks and why engaging students through play-based experiences is really so important. The course is called LEGO Braille Bricks Play-Based Teaching Method. It's worth 4 hours of ACVREP credit. It's free, which is great. And with this 4 hours of ACVREP credit, it can actually be translated into general continued education units for recertification. So in that, I want to be able to share with you our final lesson that we want to demo today is actually a lesson that comes right out of the APH Hive. And a participant, her name is Alison Lawani. She represents the state schools for the deaf and blind out of Arizona. She enrolled in this course, participated in all the video modules, took the assessments, did wonderfully, and submitted a follow-up activity. And I have to admit, I was so enthralled and excited by the activity that she submitted. I told Leanne we had to feature it in today's webinar. So this lesson that we're going to look at is Alison's follow-up activity for taking the LEGO Braille course. And I am just excited to be able to share that with you. And just to let you know too, Alison is a certified orientation and mobility specialist. And you're going to see how a certified orientation mobility specialist used the LEGO Braille Bricks to apply to a lesson.
So let's dig into her lesson. Her lesson was titled Orientation Quadrants. I'll let you help me figure out what area might this fall in, but think about it right now. Okay. The materials were a base plate, one each of the letters N, S, E, and W, and 4 bricks with different dot configurations. On the base plate, she wanted us to create an XY axis. The holistic skills that she identified as being in this activity are social, creative, and cognitive. So let's get into our orientation quadrants and see what we needed to do. So I have a base plate that I used plain black traditional Legos to create an XY axis on my base plate. I found those letters N, S, W, and E, and I placed them on top of that black line I created. N at the top, S at the bottom, E to the right, W to the left. What did I make? I'll let you write that. What did I make? XY axis with N, S, E, and W. I have definitely made the beginnings of a compass. So we're talking about our directions. What she asked you to do was then work with other bricks and talk about where to place them. She had a variety of suggestions. I'm going to start with what I would consider the easiest, the beginnings to north, south, east, and west. Taking a white brick that has a certain number of dots. I grabbed one that has 1. I grabbed a second one that had 2, a third one that had 3, and a fourth one that had 4, which ended up a comma, a K, a period, and a T. What I was looking for was how many people were going to be in my little car. So I have one with 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. So you can actually talk with your student about find the car with 1 person and have them going north on the road. So you can take the brick, use it in a car position, and have it moving and setting it on the actual axis. So the north-south becomes a road or an intersection. And your east-west becomes a road and the intersection. Take the car with 4 people and make it going to the east or on the east side. Those are your basic 4 sections. Those tend to be the easiest ones to pick up, but northeast, northwest, southwest, and southeast tend to be more challenging. Well, what a great way to say, find the car with 2 people and put it in the northeast parking lot, finding the N, finding the E, and realize it has to be between the 2. Do you remember where the car with 1 person is? They were going north. The car going north with 1 person needs to park in the northwest parking lot. Finding west, finding north, parking the car. How about the car with 3 people? We hadn't placed them yet. Can you place the car with 3 people in the same parking lot as the car with 2 people? You found the one with 2 people. What parking lot is that? And have the student name north, east before they place it down next to it. So again, you're using your orientation mobility skills with LEGO Braille Bricks. Before I go on, one of the things I wanted to share is that we had a very brave, and I am very proud of our educator and our student who were willing to participate and share their learning. We all can be extremely critical of one another. So what I'd like you to do for a moment is raise your hand, say kudos to that person virtually, and realize it's hard to be on display. We can always do things better, all of us. But what you did get to see as a student and a teacher enjoying learning and enjoying Braille Bricks. Now, before we get to any other questions, we do have one more upcoming presentation. It's March 17th, and it is Brick by Brick Numeracy. Again, we've reached out to our educators and say, you know what? We'd love to feature you and your students. Realize that is a hard thing to do, but we welcome any of you to share with us the educating you're doing with others, because the only way we learn is from one another. And that collaborative learning and where we're doing our own version of lesson study is a great way to build our field up. So that was Playful Experiences for Pre-Braille instruction. And you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm seeing some questions come into the chat. I see, how would it be best to separate the bricks in the large bin? We actually covered that in a previous webinar. There are a variety of ways to do so. It is definitely something that people have come up with all sorts of ways. There is no one right way to do it. So do think about that. The orientation and mobility lesson is not available on the LEGO's website. Amy, will it be available in the Hive?
Eventually it will. We're getting to the capacity of having certain things tweaked within the APH Hive to allow that. But for right now, your only opportunity to access that lesson is by watching the video again today to gather more information about it. So I am loved what we covered today, all of the variations. It was great to continue to be in partnership with the National Braille Institute and be able to feature ways of using the LEGO Braille Bricks. Again, a shout out to our teachers that helped us today. Ashley Adams out of Ohio, Janessa, of eager to learn 5th grade student, and Allison out of the state of Arizona. We couldn't have done what we did today without the both of you partnering with us on that. So thank you. And we look forward to having you come and join us in a week from today for our brick by brick numeracy.